actually quickly, it's something you mentioned previously in the interview, was Roddy Piper. Now, for me, one of the greatest of all times. And I don't know if you watched the series on the network, Legends House, from a few years ago, and he was on that. And you've got to see just what an incredible, funny person that Roddy Piper was. He liked to have a prank. So what are your memories or funny stories that you've shared with Roddy Piper?
Mate, if I started telling you the stories, no, kids watch your show and adults watch your show. These are all, I can't tell you. I can tell you one. I, you know, every night it was something different. Every night there was little things. I worked with him, and when he called me up and got me into Northwest Championship Wrestling, we worked with him and Rick Martel, more or less 6-man tags, 4-man tags. We had Buddy Rose, Playboy Buddy Rose, and we brought him into the Sheepherder Army. He wore Army gear with us, and we went into 6-man tags. They would bring in Andre the Giant. They would bring in Jesse Ventura. They would bring in someone else. Then we'd go back to tags, then back to singles. Me against Rick Martel, me against Roddy, Butch, vice versa. We did that for a year, 14 months. I was in that territory maybe for 18 months. 14 months, we were married to these two. So you can imagine, how much happened.
Yeah.
God bless them. I don't know how far I can go with you. Anyhow, now after we left Northwest Championship Wrestling, we were booked down in Charlotte. The first person before us that left Northwest was Jimmy Snooker, and he was there as the World Championship with Ray Stevens. They were the World Championships. Butch and me come in, and we became the Mid-Atlantic Mid-Atlantic champions, and we were working around there. And about 2 months later, Roddy Piper came in. So we'd be traveling with Roddy Piper on the road. He was a heel lad with us. One night in South Carolina, those days in the early 80s, this is 1981, that was a real redneck area. You know what I mean? North was more uppity, South was more, really redneck. You understand what I'm talking about? So, and some of the towns, we had to do a television every Wednesday night. In the towns, I can't even remember the name at the moment, but it was a 2-hour drive, and we went through a lot of small towns on the way. So driving there, you'd be doing 55, and then you'd have to go 45, 35, 25. And then all of a sudden you'd hit the town, and the town you'd go through was only 100 yards long. It would be one of those little pokey towns with about 4 stores, and have a sheriff's department, and we'll be on a main drive. On the main drag, there would be a street of about a quarter of a mile with shops on either side, and that was it. You're through there, and you're back out into the country. Well, we got caught one night leaving a town, and we're in the country, and we started speeding up, and we got out. A guy must have followed us for about 10 miles and then pulled us over. He said, I caught you on the clock radar going through this town. I think it went down to 25 miles an hour. So we were about 25, 30 miles out when he pulled us over. And he says, one of you, you have to come back to the courthouse with me. And this was 2 a.m. And he made the driver go in his car, so we had to follow him back to the courthouse. You understand? He put one in the back seat of his car, which was the cage, of course. It was Roddy, and we drove back to the courthouse. We drove back downtown to the police station. Courthouse was next door. Well, you won't believe this, but the judge, we arrived at the courthouse. He took us in. Next minute, a guy comes in with slippers on and a robe on, a dressing gown. They woken up the judge, and we were in bloody court. and that, the speeding and all that, and he finds, and that usually if you have, they fine you if you can't pay up there, they take your license off you. You know, not only they take your whole card off you, you know, your license. So you have to go back to that courthouse to get your license. You can't apply for another one because it's in that you know it's been taken off you. But if you come up with the money, so we scraped. They found us, you know, Roddy, I think 323 something, and we scraped up the money between the three of us. And we paid the fine. So we left the courthouse, and the judge is still in the courthouse. The cop is gone now. The judge is still in the courthouse doing the paperwork. Now he's sitting at a desk, and about 8 feet away from the desk, on the side of him, was a big window, and we could see him from his shoulders up outside. And then Butch and Roddy come around, and they pissed up on the window. So if he turned around, he'd see piss coming on the window from the, he'd see their heads. They pissed on the window with the judge there. I was freaking out, and they didn't give a damn because they'd been drinking too. Drinking it after the show. You're having a cold one always after the show. You'd be drinking beer on the way back to the town. I was never a beer drinker, but you know, that was it. Yeah, that was one of the times of Roddy. He didn't give a damn. He was humorous. Back in the Northwest, you know, they were always joking with Buddy Rose. Buddy Rose had a van, and we all used to travel to the outskirts of the town with the van was all covered in, so they never saw Rick Martel and Roddy Piper in the back of the van. But they would argue on the way, and we'd stop the van, and then all of a sudden we'd have to mark off 40 yards for a sprint, and they'd get out, and Buddy would have to race against Roddy or Rick Martel just for a bet. These things were happening all the way. We'd mark it off, and then I'd get back in the van and argue. Something else would come up. You know, they were fun arguments. It would get heated. Crazy stuff. You know what I mean? All the time.
I'm tempted to make this an 18+ interview and just get some more funny stories.
Oh, yeah, this is mate, Roddy, there's a lot of stories about him. God bless him.